Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you having me. This is my book, everybody. So, Stutterer Interrupted. Get it on almost anywhere except for Amazon. All right. So, let's get started. So, I've been watching the whole conference on and off all day. I am a lay person. I do not know much about technology, but I am thoroughly paranoid. So great job, guys. You're doing your job. Excellent. Also, most of the technology and ethics conferences and talks that I've seen are sponsored by Google, by Amazon, by Bezos's subsidiary, by Bezos's nonprofit. And so, it's maybe a little bit slanted there. So I appreciate the independence spirit and the grassroots that this day has brought. And I've learned a lot from all of you. Now, I've met with some of the big tech companies in the past to, maybe do some education to decrease the stigma, either within the company around disability issues. I don't know if you can tell, I stutter. I always have to say that either, I stutter and your internet sucks. Both of those things can be true. But I like to educate organizations, and I've approached many tech companies, especially being from Oakland. And that has meant that I've met with them and I've given them my thing about the stigma and how a lot of times the stigmas that people with disabilities experience are because of the images that are spread throughout the media and spread throughout social media and tech. And that is when I only have one meeting with them. I never get called back. It feels like a bad date. And of course, this is my third time that I've worked with ethics and tech. So I really appreciate that as well. And let's see, there is the interaction between disability and tech, which I think is really important to talk about. And I haven't seen that talked a lot throughout the day. So I wanted to bring that up. For people who have a disability, technology has been really important in terms of improving their lives. And even things like Facebook and Zoom have been used to decrease social isolation. So the tools are really good, but people don't always talk to us about how the tools are used, and oftentimes adaptive technologies that can help people, that sometimes are bought, and sometimes companies or sometimes states and organizations buy them, and it just sits there at the person's house, never touched, because there isn't that interaction about, is it going to be helpful? What are the things that are barriers for the person? And can the person get some additional training to know how it will get into their life? So that's always an important thing to consider there. Now, also, one of my friends, Dr. Michelle Hernandez, has told me that the lazier that our world gets goes along, it is correlated with the technology, because the technology is oftentimes, it's been based off of adaptive technology, like texting. That was originally from the deaf community. The phone was originally in accommodation for deaf people. So there are these things that have been seeped into the mainstream and adopted. And what my friend Dr. Hernandez says, and she has rheumatoid arthritis and has limited use of her hands. And she says that the lazier that the world has gotten, and the more they use technology, the better and more accessible it is for her. So a lot of these things that are used, like dictation on your phone, are oftentimes the things that help people who have a disability every day, and I have dyslexia and I use the dictation every day. But it's important to have that collaboration in real and genuine ways, and I'll talk more about that. And also, Bahid, if there's any questions afterwards, if there's enough time, please feel free to ask me. Now, as somebody who is a comic and a activist, I do a comedy troupe. I do a show called the Comedians with Disabilities Act. And originally it was me, a guy who used a wheelchair, another guy who's blind, another guy who's a little person. And people would come up to me all the time and they'd say, you know, so stuttering and dyslexia, those aren't real disabilities. You shouldn't be in that comedy troupe. And I'd explain to them, if you look at the definition of what a disability is, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, it's a physical or a mental impairment that substantially results in having to deal with assholes. So I'm pretty sure it qualifies. So there you go. And there is this thing that happens when I perform. I perform a lot in the Bay Area and Berkeley, especially, very politically correct audiences. And I always appreciate people who really try to be empathetic. But sometimes the audiences are so politically correct that they won't laugh at the disabled, even when they're telling jokes. So that it's very weird. They're very uncomfortable about laughing. And then what I also get is, and women, I'm sorry, but it's oftentimes women will look at each other when I'm doing my nightclub act, very loose, telling dirty jokes, the whole thing. They will look at each other and they'll do this. Oh, always look in the eyes. Oh, like, I don't know about all of you, but I love sympathy, but why does it have to be in the middle of my act? Why is that the time? Because it's not my everyday life. It's not like when I go to Starbucks and I place my order and I say my name and the barista responds with, "Is that Nina with 5 N's?" Where's my pity moan then? No, it's always in my act, always now. So it's always very weird to do comedy and watch the response it's the response to my stuttering. Now, I wanted to share a kind of a joke that I tell when I do more like activism and civil rights things, presentations. And it goes like this. This is one that you can steal. You can show everybody how disability sensitive you are. And it goes like this. Let's see. Okay. How many disabled people does it take to screw in a light bulb? And you guys all play at home and say, how many? But don't stutter when you do it, because I'll hear you emotionally and I'll be very mad. So how many? 1 to screw it in, and 5 able-bodied people to say, "You are such an inspiration." So that is oftentimes something that us with a disability experience, that people will patronize us, people will put us as inspirations, and that is okay for us to be inspirations if you'll change. But a lot of times it's just like, "You're such an inspiration. I'm so glad I'm not you." So I wanted to challenge everybody here to really look at their attitudes around disability and to look deeper at the disabled experience and how you have absorbed that and how that also comes into your work, because there are some extremely strange things that are going around ethics and tech and disability, which I will touch on. And I mentioned inspiration porn, and that is always a good example. It's that joke is a good example of that inspiration porn that you oftentimes see online. Okay, So I always like to educate my audiences about stuttering. People who stutter, we are only 1% of the general population of the world. And people don't always understand what stuttering is. They think it's anxiety, or they think it's intelligence. It's not any of this. There is a difference in our brain right here on the left side, right here. So when we talk, we stutter, but when we sing, that is with a different part of the brain. So that is done with the right side. And so when we sing or when we use a funny voice, then we are more fluent. We stutter less. Now, the best example that I have for this is Marilyn Monroe, who, by the way, if you stutter, Marilyn Monroe, a double M name, not necessarily the name I would have gone with, but perhaps she stuttered on C's instead. I don't know. But Marilyn, of course, was an actress who stuttered, and a lot of people don't know that. And that's why she talked the way she talked. Marilyn talked like this, because if you talk like this, you can switch speech from the left side of your brain to the right side of the brain, and then it makes you more fluent, which is amazing, right? Like, that is such a weird trick that I just played on my brain. Now, once I was talking to a guy, and he was new to me and I was new to him, and I was telling him about stuttering, trying to educate him. And I explained this very thing about Marilyn and her brain. And I did the voice, which the guy said, "Oh, that's very sexy. Maybe you should talk that way all the time." I was like, "No, that's cool. That's cool. I think that I'd rather stutter." And that is the thing, is that people want to change us. People have a lot of ideas about how we can be made normal. And why is that? Is that because they think that will make our lives better? Or is it because they think that we will make them more comfortable if we don't have a disability? So that is something that I wanted to share, is that experience, that just because you are disabled doesn't mean that you want to not be able, or that, sorry, this is the dyslexia, the double who stutters, and she found true love, and now she doesn't stutter anymore. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that the biggest bunch of Disney, the male organ cures everything BS you've ever heard? Oh my God, it is just like that. And again, that push to be able-bodied. And one way that people who are working in tech and working in ethics in tech and advocates, one important piece to address the ableism in our world, and especially the ableism in technology, and that want to change people, is to engage with us, engage with people who have a disability, so you hear it from us. Now, not necessarily as like, "Oh, let's have a focus group and give me all your free advice." That's oftentimes how it happens. Let me, because everyone comes to me and they want me to give it away for free. And I'm not a stuttering slut like that. Like, you have to pay me. So I will collaborate, but also I'm not here to just spew out free information. It's important that that companies hire, and that organizations hire a diverse workforce, so that can come within, and that those diverse voices, those diverse thoughts can all be there in the organization, so that can be part of the conversation there. And engaging in that way, part of that is being an ally. And I taught, and I heard a lot throughout the day about being in Ally, and I wanted to share one story that I shared in my TEDx talk. So I'd like to share it here about my own very personal experiences about the importance of other people being in Ally. So when I was in 7th grade, or in 6th grade, I ran for student body government, and I won. And the next year, for the office I was about to hold, I had to be sworn in. Now, I went to a Catholic school. Catholic schools sometimes, especially in the 1980s, took themselves very, very seriously. You would have thought it was JFK being sworn in. So here I was getting ready for this big inauguration, and we had a rehearsal. At the rehearsal, what I learned is that in front of the entire school, in front of 250 kids and teachers and parents and priests and nuns, I would have to get up on stage in the multi-purpose room and say, I insert name here. Now, when you stutter, I insert name here is one of those things that terrifies you, because almost all of us stutter on our names. And so for me, I knew that it would come out as Nina G. And that was a legit stutter there. I wasn't putting it on. So at the rehearsal, I'm there, all the kids are there for all their leadership qualities. I say, Nina G, and they start to snicker and laugh. And I was like, how am I going to get through this? This is going to be awful. And on my way out, I walked out of the rehearsal hall, or out of the multi-purpose room, and there was this one 8th grade boy who followed me. And he came up to me and he said, can you say ninja? And I'm like, I guess so. He's, well, just switch it around and say Nina instead. Or and just so go into ninja, but then say Nina and you'll be fine. And I was like, thank you. Because when you stutter, you do get this advice all the time. You do get stutter explained to. But this was one of the few times where I accepted it and I appreciated it, because he was the only one there who was trying to help. And that was the best way that he knew how, was to help. Also, he was kind of cute. So you get a pass when you're a 7th grade girl in that kind of situation. So he got a pass. But all that week, I practiced my name in front of the mirror. I practiced it with my parents. I practiced it with my speech therapist. And when the day came, I got up in front of the entire school and I said, Nina G, just like that. And in my 7th grade girl brain, I thought my life was over. The Alameda Times-Star was there, and I was like, they're going to report me. And not in like the good social media way of, oh, she did it and she overcame. No, it was going to be like, she stuttered in front of the school. This is so awful. So I had all these catastrophizing thoughts, and I walked off stage and I went to recess that day, later that day. And I was there talking to that same 8th grade boy. It's the ninja guy. And that is when a 3rd grade boy walked up to us. And he was one of the kids who saw the other kids laugh at me in the rehearsal. And he came up to me and said, hey, Nina, which is something that I've always heard throughout my entire life. And even now, it's only funny if it's done to the Chia Pet song. Only time that it's funny. So it's Nina, like that. Only time that it's good. But he came up to me and said, Nina. And that is when the 8th grade boy did something that I had never seen. He gently knelt down to look the little boy in the eye and said, if I ever hear you saying that ever again, I'm going to tell everybody your penis is this big. And I was so touched. I was so touched. It was something that I had never seen. No one had ever stuck up for me aside from my parents like that. And I had a crush on him the rest of this school year. When I told this story over my TED Talk, I thought I might get some TED Talk action. I did not. I've not traced him down, but I always appreciated that. And that day, what I learned was a few things. One is that I could stutter and live. And that was such an important thing, especially because I would make my living one day stuttering openly. Also, I didn't need to change. The way that I talked is a valid form. And for those people who want to put a brain implant in me, for those people who want to put something on my ear and use a technology to bypass my stuttering, I don't need that. I need people to shut the hell up. I'd say the F word, but I don't think Vahid would go for that. And what I also learned that day is that I had allies, and that allyship needs to happen every day, all day long. What I see a lot of times in academia, because that is a world that I've been in, that people will preach multicultural, they will preach the diversity and social justice, and it's something in the air, but when you interact with them, it's not there. And to practice every day the values that you bring into your practice with people, with organizations, with how you spend your money, that it goes for everything. And interacting with people who have a disability so that it brings their stories and their voices to the forefront. One of my psychologists, I've had many throughout my life, once we talked about that term empowerment. And for many of you, I would encourage you to empower people with a disability to be brought in so that their voices could be heard in the organizations that you work with. That's important. But also, empowerment implies that they don't already have that power, that you are lending your power over to them. It isn't about that. It is about you letting them come in and you stepping out of the way and listening. And that day I learned what an ally really was. Was it somebody who stuck up for me? It was someone who respected me. And also what I learned that day, and this has been very important to my comedy, is if anybody ever makes fun of me, I just make fun of you know what. So that has been my time. I really appreciate this day, and thank you for the messages that you all bring.
Thank you so much, Nina. It's so great to hear from Nina G. Please follow her comedy. Nina G, what was the name of the book again?
It's right here. Stutterer Interrupted, the comedian who almost didn't happen.
And what sites can they buy it from besides Amazon?
Anywhere and everywhere.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you, Nina. Thanks for being part of the event. Your time is greatly appreciated.